Hey everyone, it's Michael Zipursky, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dave Norton. Dave, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so Dave, you are the founder and principal of Stone Mantle, an experience strategy company. Your clients and collaborators, and we'll talk about that, include the likes of Coca-Cola, Disney, Target, and a whole bunch of other very large, well-known, brands. So I thought where we'd start off today is just to have your definition of experience strategy, because you are an experience strategy company. For those who might not really be familiar with, what actually is experience strategy, could you kind of set the landscape up for us a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that are familiar with CX and the measurement of experiences, and there's
So customer experience, CX.
customer experience,
Yep.
that kind of focus. There's a whole group of people out there that are focused on experience design per se. There are user-centered design researchers that are uh, we sometimes run into on a regular basis, usability people. There's a lot of different professions that really focus on what type of meaningful experience the customer should have or the employee should have, right?
Mm-hmm.
On both sides. What we focus on is how to do strategy in such a way that a company can create something that is meaningful to their customers, and at the same time, it it creates a value proposition for them. A lot of what you see in CX and in the other categories as well are kind of like these industry standards types of things. So they'll say you need to have a journey map, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you need to have an NPS score, or you need to have a persona.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody tries to do kind of best practices around persona design or journey mapping or whatever. And the net result is that pretty much everyone has kind of the same approach to customer experiences. It's not differentiating, not an opportunity. And what we really have to do is kind of step above and look at what is what's going on in consumer behavior that we can attach ourselves to in a strategic way that will allow us to get the job done for the customer in a more successful way than maybe our competitors can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where experience strategy lies. It's you think about, like, I often compare it to marketing strategy. I think we all know what marketing execution is, and we know what advertising is, and um, we know different elements of market research. But if there's not a marketing strategy, the pieces don't all work together very well. And a marketing strategy, you absolutely want something that's unique and compelling.
Mm-hmm.
An experience strategy, what you want to do is have a point of view on the customer that no one else has.
Right.
So
Can
in
you can you give
marketing,
maybe
it's about,
give an
yeah,
example? Sorry to interrupt, Dave. I'm just wondering, maybe for those that are still trying to really
yeah.
get a clear picture in their mind, like what would be an example of maybe some work that you've done at Stone Mantle with a client that you think would be just kind of a good, easy to understand, or just an application that would make sense for people?
Well, I'll just use we did not work on this one to begin with, but it's just so obvious. When Apple took a stance on privacy, they had a point of view. And that point of view permeates through everything that they do in their design, in the way that they solution. There's a job to get done, maintain customer,
Privacy and so forth. Yeah.
privacy,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, security and safety, and you can rely on them for that. For that, it's somewhat differentiating. There's a lot of companies out there that maybe have a role to play in privacy, but what makes them unique is the way that they make it permeate everything that their experience is about, and they make good decisions because of it.
Right.
We just finished, we run a program called the Collaboratives, where we bring companies together to study topics over the next year, over a year's period of time. And we just finished our final meeting for this year. And some of the companies were developing points of view. They were developing their experience strategy around the future of digital clothing, which is, something I don't think of all that much. But you're going to have all these clothes in the metaverse. Somebody is going to have to support you in the metaverse, right? Another group was working on their point of view on payments. And how to develop a new experience strategy around payments, which is something that I think is easier for people to understand. These points of view are proprietary to them, and so we don't necessarily share them because they're not customer facing.
Right. So what I'm kind of taking from what I'm hearing is that experience strategy, where let's say a typical company that is not using or applying what you're talking about in terms of experience strategy, the standard might be for a company just to think about a strategy in terms of like what is best for the business, what is best for them. They might even bring in some metrics that are around the customer satisfaction, like an NPS kind of score or something along those lines. But experience strategy is really about a kind of more holistic or more comprehensive view of not just a few pieces, but it's really the driver of the company strategy is from the customer's perspective. Is that
correct?
Okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's being able to articulate what the customer will want in the near future in such a way that everyone within the organization can begin to rally around that that mission, that mantra, whatever it is.
Okay. So my next question then, because you work with some, very large organizations, and we will have some people that are joining us right now who they might work at a large organization, or maybe they're even the leader of a large organization. But for many people, they're going to be, small boutique consulting firms or even solo consultants. And so does this idea of experience strategy benefit them? Does firm size matter? And I'm just wondering if there are any examples of experience strategy, maybe even from your own company, or is this really just something that is best suited or better suited for the mid to larger size company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most companies who are consulting firms understand that it is not, and it doesn't matter how big or little you are, it's not enough to be a subject matter expert, to have a methodology or a process that you follow. You must have an experience for the customer. And what B2B customers are looking for from experiences and from their consultants today is very different than the old days where you took them out to dinner and you fed them, and maybe you went golfing with them, and you did a little favor for them and stuff like that. That's not what they're interested in at all. And so I think you do have to have a strategy for how you're going to engage your clients, regardless of their size and regardless of the category that you work in. Now, I'm thinking about all of these amazing consulting groups that I ran into at the Qualtrics Summit this year, the Explore Summit. Many of them were in education, and they were working with local school districts or states. So a very different dynamic. They knew that they had to be up to speed not only on how to make a better customer experience for their clients, but how to create a better customer experience that they project to to their clients as well.
So Dave, tell me, like, what would that, I just want to make this really tangible for everybody, again, joining us. Can you offer an example or maybe a couple of examples of, like, let's just say that you're talking right now to a boutique consulting firm, and just a hypothetical scenario here. They have, 8 to 10 team members. Some might be full-time, some might be part-time or contractors, and they serve whatever industry. What, if I'm the founder, the leader of that firm, as an example, what should I, as a leader, be thinking about or looking at? Where should I even place my attention if I'm trying to improve the overall kind of experience, and then build a strategy around that? What are some of the low-hanging fruit opportunities?
That's a challenging question because it is unique to the particular company and the services that the company offers. There's not a blanket statement that I can go after. I'm thinking of a company that I ran into a few years back, that they consulted around semiconductors.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they worked with a lot of different manufacturers, and I don't know if your audience knows, but there's not just like one or two semiconductor manufacturers out there. There's actually any number of small semiconductor companies that build these devices that are custom made for specific situations. And so this particular consulting group was looking to differentiate themselves from everyone else. And of course, they had to compete with some really big guys. And so they wanted to find a way to make their overall experience different. The first thing that we landed on for them was thought leadership. What's going on in the category around thought leadership? Are there any opportunity areas for you as a consultant to bring a new perspective, a new set of frameworks, and to make sure that your thought leadership is truly thought leadership, and it's not like 10 years old and you borrowed most of it from a number of books that you read, right? That it's really, really yours. And so that's a great place to start. How does a small consulting firm develop new thought leadership, turn that thought leadership into a story that the customer can understand, that solves for the problem that the customer is trying to solve for, and do it in such a way that it's customized to that particular company and what that company is looking for. You just think about those elements right there: customization, the thinking itself, the newness of it, and you're beginning to get some of the key elements that would go into a B2B consulting experience strategy. Right. And then you want to make sure that you manifest what you're talking about in both the way that you solution for them and also the way in which they experience the time that they've spent with you. So if the time that they spend with you doesn't represent what you're actually trying to manifest, it's not going to, there's going to be a disconnect.
I mean, so that the example of thought leadership to me makes a lot of sense. I think people will recognize the value of, developing IP, right? Intellectual property, getting it out there, publishing, let's say in different publications, or running online webinars or executive briefings or giving talks. Right. And then the part that you layered on top of that is kind of that one next step of customizing it. So being very, very specific, and making sure that it's very relevant for the kind of that true dream ideal client. And I would imagine, or I guess my brain right now, as you were explaining that, was thinking, well, this is like the exact opposite of going broad and having a more general message. It seems that in order to really create the right experience, you need to be very specific and to be very clear on who you want that content, in this example, to resonate with. Is that true? Like, in order for an experience strategy to be effective, does it need to be very focused? and customized, or can it actually be broader and more general?
The insight that is driving the point of view, the thought leadership in this case, can be very, very broad. We have a series of things. Every year, we do primary research on what B2B and B2C and healthcare customers are looking for. And some of the insights that we come up with are things like, today, customers are not interested in conveniences. They're interested in time well spent. So I'm taking a position in that case.
Right.
I'm saying, you guys are everybody else is out there is focused on convenience. We're going to say, based on what we're seeing in the research, that it's not about convenience, it's about time well spent. Now, that is a very broad insight that can be applied to a number of situations. And then and that's great for me, because then I can talk about it in conferences or in a newsletter. But then when I'm actually working with a client and I'm out of sales mode and I'm into delivery mode, that's when I need to be able to actually deliver what time well spent means for that client's customers, and what time well spent means for that client as I try to deliver for them. I'm not going to waste their time. I'm not going to do things that they're not interested in doing. I'm going to live that principle as I'm trying to share that particular principle with them.
Okay. Yeah. So, you're answering one of the questions that I had, which is, so I understand the idea of kind of, the research, developing some IP around that, or having a very clear point of view, then getting it out there, communicating through whatever platform and kind of method, or channel. But now you start talking about examples of how to actually, deliver the experience inside of the client engagement. And to me, it sounds like you first have to not only understand what is the concept that you're trying to help your clients with. So in this case, right, it's like making the you said it's, what was it? Not just the convenience, but it was like time well spent. So in order to deliver that as a company, so let's say I'm a consulting firm and I'm going to deliver time well spent. Throughout the company, we have to first get very clear on, like, what is the definition of time well spent? What does it actually mean? How does it show up? How do we communicate that? How do we deliver that from our communications with the clients? Do we send gift baskets? Do we send a handwritten letter? Do we do X? Do we do Y? Do we do Z? So once you have all that, then it's about really making sure that you bring that to life inside of all of your engagements and so forth with a client. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
I think that's exactly right. And I am a strong believer that if you're a consultant, you're also a researcher. You need to ground your consulting in not just knowledge in general, but in specific research that you conducted on the problem that you're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important part.
I completely agree. I think too often people are just taking, like, they're putting ideas out there, but ideas aren't grounded in anything specific or unique. And if we again come back to this idea of, how do you differentiate? How do you create distinction? How do you stand out from others? Well, if you have access to data or research that others don't have, or you're able to pick, like, if everybody's saying, the market wants convenience, but you're able to come out and say, well, no, actually what they really want is time well spent, and it's based on this study that we did, that creates a whole different kind of experience. And that also positions you, to stand out from everybody else, and you can back it up. So I think that's a really, really great point. So you worked with, again, very well-known brands: Disney, Coca-Cola, US Bank, P&G, Adobe, a whole bunch of others. Did those companies seek you out? Did they just come to you, Dave, or to Stone Mantle, or did you intentionally reach out to them?
In the early stages of our company, it was kind of organic growth, that people would leave certain companies and go to other companies, and we would follow them.
Right.
I think a lot of consulting firms know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Nowadays, we do a lot of outreach. We have email campaigns, we have business development teams, we have PR folks that we're working with. But at the end of the day, it's still the recommendation, oftentimes, of somebody else
Hmm.
that gets us in the door. So I think I'd say 80% of our growth is organic growth, and only 20% is from our own efforts to try
Right.
to.
What have you done in the marketing kind of realm that has just not worked at all, just fallen kind of flat on its face, and you go, well, okay, we tried that, but that just didn't work for us?
We used to rely heavily on conferences and speaking engagements to generate new opportunities. We do not see those as nearly as effective today. We'll do them if a company invites us to, or an organization invites us to come speak. We'll definitely speak at those events, but we don't find them successful. In our particular industry, we don't find trade shows or having a booth at a conference to be all that successful, unless we have a number of clients that are already going to that particular
Sure.
show, then or event, then sometimes it makes sense. What we find to be most successful is 20-minute one-on-one conversations with companies where we're talking to them about what is experience strategy, how it could benefit them. That's kind of the first step. We've also modified the way that we deliver our product so that clients don't have to sign up for a major project right away. There are small engagements that they can get involved with. We have like certification programs, we have our collaboratives, we have different ways for them to engage with us while they're trying to become more of a champion within their organization to do larger projects with us.
Right. So it sounds like you've kind of developed these discovery offers to get the foot in the door, lower risk on the client side, lower overall level of investment. So they don't have to think about it too much. It makes sense to get to kind of taste it, have the appetizer, see if they want to move to the main course afterwards. You talk about this kind of first step as a 20-minute conversation. Are those coming as a result of outreach that you're doing, or is it just through referrals or people that you know? Like, how, I'm wondering for somebody who's listening to this going, well, yeah, I'd love to have 20 minutes with a potential buyer inside of an established organization, but I'm finding it really hard to to get their attention, to set up a meeting, or maybe I'm just not even sure where to start. What would you advise them, or how are you kind of approaching that to be successful in getting those meetings?
Yeah, I think it is incredibly hard to get those meetings. And I've noticed that just over the last 5 years, as people's inboxes have become so bombarded, right?
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult to get in front of people. And like everybody else, we use a multi-prong approach where we're talking to them on email, we're calling them, we're also doing LinkedIn to try to get in front of the right decision makers. In my particular work, the last person I want to talk to is procurement. The buyer, per se, needs to be someone who is in need of help to get their work done, not someone who's been tasked with finding a resource. And so I spend no time, and we almost never respond to procurement RFP requests either, because if we don't know somebody within the organization, we're not going to spend time trying to pitch something that is coming out of kind of a procurement process. So we try really hard to focus on specific individuals that are going to resonate with our message, that are going to be interesting, and we cultivate them. We spend time with them. We talk to them. We send them free stuff. We learn from them. We involve them in our communities, and sometimes it takes a couple of years before they send us a real project.
How do you think about that in terms of, so you're investing a lot of time, resources, money as well, I would imagine, into kind of, cultivating, strengthening these relationships. Do you have, as a leader of the company, do you kind of think about this, hey team, you can spend X amount of dollars in getting in front of this prospective client and sending them things, or like, how do you think about the investment of and budget towards developing that relationship to, what point does it make sense and what point does it not make sense?
And that is an incredibly good question, and it's really, really hard. Um, the fact of the matter is the more I spend on marketing and business development, the less money I personally make in the short run. It comes out of my pocket, right?
Hmm.
It's the profitability of the company,
Sure.
and so it can be really painful. Um, I I have all the respect in the world for people who have budgets and targeted locations that they're going after. I listen as hard as I can for new opportunities that I think are going to be important, and I just go after them.
Right.
And if that requires me to spend some money to make it happen, then I spend the money. And then we just watch kind of how our growth goes. Like a lot of consulting firms, we got hit pretty hard during COVID, and we're still rebuilding
Right.
our business, and they're still getting their travel. They're starting to get their travel budgets back. Our clients are, and
Right.
they're, and so it takes time. And I think it's important not to be too frustrated with yourself um, when things don't work out.
Yeah. Well, it's so often, as business owners, it's easy to focus on the short term and to judge success or failure or progress, in a very short period of time. We're often so hard on ourselves and, only looking at like what's ahead and not looking at behind to actually see what we've accomplished. But I think when we expand that horizon to view longer term, then we give ourselves a little bit more kind of grace and room to go, okay, like, yeah, we actually have made some good progress, and this, things will be okay as we keep moving forward. You talk about procurement, and just for everybody who's listening in, we had Tom Searcy on the podcast recently who gave some really great advice on how to navigate procurement and deal with, procurement departments. I'm wondering as well though, Dave, when you and your team are going to market and, you are reaching out and having conversations with different buyers inside of organizations, how do you think about qualification? Like, is there any kind of alarm bell or something that, like, when you see this or hear that you go, okay, like, yeah, we're not going to take this any further. Like, is there anything that you do to ensure that you're not spending time with the wrong people?
Anonymous RFP requests is like a big um, problem, and sometimes we'll pitch just so that we can, and we know we won't get it, just so that we can get a foot in the door or be able to go back to the people that we're actually trying to pitch to and say, hey, we were part of this RFP process, right?
Hmm.
We have no um, hope of actually getting in that way. Um, Other things, like um, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, ridiculous timelines, um, budgets that don't um, have anything to do with what it's going to take to actually do the work.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing that we look for is we think that they understand what it is that they're asking for, which I think a lot of consultants find themselves in situations where their clients are asking for something, but it's not the right thing. It's
Hmm.
not going to be helpful to them. Those are all issues that come up on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing I was wondering about is, today you're a team of 8 people. And if you could just kind of walk us through the hiring path that you've taken, like start off as you, then how quickly into the business did you make your first, hire or
Mhm.
two, and what roles were they for?
Yeah, my company grew really fast between 2005 and 2008. And
Why
we
was
went
that?
from uh, because there was nobody else out there that was talking about experience strategy.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about experiences, but nobody was talking about strategy per se. And so, and we had landed a couple of really big fish. Those are great. You just love it when a whale comes in. The only problem is when a whale comes in, all resources are focused on the whale, and then you eat the whale and you have to go find the next whale.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a long time, oftentimes, to find that next whale. But we got hit really hard with the 2008 downturn. We had a lot of financial clients at the time, and some of them just up and disappeared. Wachovia was one of our biggest clients, great company, and now mostly a part of Wells Fargo, right?
Right.
And uh, so so I'd scaled up to about 10, 12 people, still really small consulting firm. And then I dropped down to 2 people, myself and one guy.
Wow.
And then we started the process of rebuilding. And the next time around, it took a while. The economy didn't recover right away, and it took a while. And we were hunting whales
Mm-hmm.
through the 2010 to 2000. I don't know, 2015. We were just hunting one whale after another. And in 2013, I knew that I just couldn't just keep going after whales. I had to find another way. And that's when I developed this collaborative, which is this year-long program for companies that it kind of focuses. It has some elements of a little bit of a conference board type of a thing, but it's primary research and it's around innovation. It's a little bit hard to describe. It takes a lot of, we have to kind of explain it to companies, but it allowed us to work at a lower price point and allowed us to have kind of fixed big contracts there where we had control over the content, and we could use it as an introductory way to get started. And so we did do that, but that took time and resources. And so we couldn't hire. I basically had to do all of the work myself with the assistance of one person who was part-time at first, then she was full-time. And so it has been slow and steady. We have relied heavily on partners who are not full-time, outside groups, small groups to kind of help us. Now we're at 8 full-time team members, but then we have a fairly large network of contractors that work with us as well.
Right.
And that works. That's effective.
And as you were going through that, did you need to hire people before you actually had work for them, or would you kind of wait to hire until you had the work in the pipeline and you felt confident they would come in, and then you went and hired? Kind of what did that timeline or process look like?
That's such a scary thing. Before we started the collaboratives, we would hire people as contractors first. They'd come in, work on a whale with us, and then we would decide when the next whale came along that we were ready to bring them on. And that was kind of our process. Now, what we tend to do is the people who join the collaboratives, they learn so much about us as a company. And we get to see them actually work. And the last 4 hires that I've had have been people who were former clients who were in the collaborative program. And I know exactly what kind of product I'm going to get from them. And so my timing can be a little bit more based on, I can be thinking about somebody for a couple of years and kind of say, when we're ready, I'm going to bring this person over. We just did that a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So it's almost like you have this tool or a process that is like building your bench of talent or this network for as you might need it. I mean, you talked about how you built up to 10 or 12 people very quickly. Then the downturn came, right? Financial crisis sort of thing. And you had to go down to 2 people. Did you at any point in that kind of period of the business think about just packing it in and, you know, closing the doors, or did that thought never enter your mind? Because I can only imagine that going from 10 or 12 people to 2 people, you know, the challenges financially, stress, like just everything. So, but I'm wondering, I mean, what was that like for you kind of to get through it? And did you think about maybe not continuing?
Man, it seems it was a while back. I don't remember ever saying I'm going to quit. I do remember wondering how I was going to get through the next month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my company's been around since 2005. I have always said I only know my income for the next 3 months. I don't have a long-term horizon. Our client projects are typically 6 to 9 months long. Our collaborative program runs over a year's period of time. That gives me a little bit of better understanding of where my revenue is going to come from, and I feel a little bit safer because of it. But in truth, I really don't know. I cannot project out more than 3 months on what my expenses are going to look like or what my profitability is going to look like. And I couldn't back then either.
And how do you deal with that? I mean, are you putting
It's
aside
stressful.
like but do you have a fund? And how many
Yeah.
months would you typically kind of make sure that you're good for, so that you don't,
Yeah. So my principle was to always keep as much of my money actually in the company as possible.
right,
So, and then I paid myself a salary that was much less than what I'd actually earned.
right,
And I built up quite a bit of cash that way that then ended up sadly being used to get through some of those difficult times. We were able to make it through COVID and, the last 3 years because we had those reserves,
yeah,
and we didn't have to let people go this time.
right.
I could have looked at that as my money because it was certainly profit that I had earned, but I just kind of took the longer view, decided to keep going.
Yeah. All right. I just got a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. I appreciate spending this time with you, Dave. So I'm wondering for you as a leader, I mean, you're the founder, it's your company, but you know, you have 8 full-time people. You work with, you know, lots of different companies, and I'm wondering how you decide to kind of allocate your time. So, you know, you have a lot of options in front of you. You could spend time on creating content, doing research, doing work, business development, hiring. How do you decide what to focus your time on, to ultimately kind of, you know, grow and improve the company?
I have the privilege now to not have to be very much involved with the project work itself. That's a huge privilege. And when you're first getting started, and there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of you. The founder is going to be right there doing the client work. Our success is the thing that keeps us going is our ability to help our clients to see the near future. And so my focus is on frameworks, concepts, and content around where consumer behavior is headed. And then I use that content in business development, in efforts. I would say that 80% of my time is spent on content and business development, and 20% of my time is spent on execution.
Got it. All right. And then before we tell people where to go to learn more about you and the company, I'm wondering what is a book that you might recommend. I'm actually going to ask you for 2 books. So one is for, and it could be a resource as well, but for those that want to learn more about experience strategy and just, you know, get a better kind of lay of the land in terms of ideas, perspectives around maybe even best practices, around experience or creating a better experience for their clients and in their business. What's maybe one resource that you might recommend for them, or a book that you might recommend for them? And then the other question I have for you around the book is one book that you have either read or listened to in the last 6 months or so, It could be fiction or nonfiction, but just something that you've really enjoyed that you think others might also find interesting.
Okay. Well, there is one book that anyone who is really focused on experience strategy must start with, and that is The Experience Economy by Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore. It's been around since 1999. It's been updated multiple times. It's a global bestseller. If you haven't read it, you probably are living under a rock. And that's not true. I mean, it's been around a long time, but if you're in experience strategy or experience design and you haven't read it, you're doing a disservice to your clients.
Yeah.
What I think when you read that, you need to keep in mind is that is their point of view on experiences. And you as a company need to have your own point of view. But I think it's the most important piece out there. The book that I'm listening to right now and just loving is Beneath the Scarlet Sky, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Beneath the Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. It's this incredible, story. It's fiction, but it's
Okay,
based on fiction, but it's based on real life experiences of this kid who, an Italian kid, who through circumstances that are unbelievable, finds himself one day helping Jews to escape World War II Italy, and the next day talking to Mussolini, and it's just crazy. This
Wow.
17-year-old kid, what his life was like, and it's real. I mean, it really happened. I am loving it. So fun.
We will link both of those up in the show notes. And then finally, Dave, I want to thank you again so much for coming on here. I mean, I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I know you said beneath the scarlet sky, like, beneath the surface. We're just kind of scratching a little bit here into your journey and everything that you've accomplished and continue to build. So I'm excited to watch as you continue to develop the business and learn more about what you guys are doing. But for those that also want to learn more about you, Dave, or about your company and the work that you guys are up to, where's maybe the one kind of website or best place for them to go to learn more?
Sure. Go to www.stonemantle, and mantle is spelled MANTEL.co.
There we go. Okay, so stonemantle.co. We will have that linked up in the show notes. Dave, thanks again so much for coming on.
Thank you.